High-profile crimes uncovered by Archangelsk investigators shocked not only the region, but the entire country in October last year. Why, having exchanged the 610, the local homeless man switched from dogs and cats to human flesh. The Archangelsk Regional Court has not had such trials yet. Dozens of journalists, heavy security, and the benches where the victims are usually located are empty. A gray-haired, stooped man in a gray jacket enters the hall, stops at the empty seats, but does not dare to sit down. He purses his lips and looks toward the dock. This is the only victim in a case that is thundered across the country. A 6-foot-tall man of indeterminate age is brought into the courtroom. He looks like an evil dwarf because of his unkempt beard and sideburns. This is the cannibal Edward Seleznev, who killed and ate 3 friends. 2 of them were homeless, the fate of the third was also difficult. An elderly man in a jacket, just the father of the third. He was the one who reported his son missing to the police, and if it wasn't for his statement, the ogre would still be at large. Finally, the jury reaches a verdict and everyone stands up as the judge enters the courtroom. The sentence is life imprisonment in the special regime colony. Seleznev says, "I'm very sorry," and without finishing the sentence, sits down on the bench, bows his head. There are many empty pages in the history of the Archangel cannibal. The investigator literally collected the evidence base bit by bit, and only his animal instinct and perseverance helped bring Seleznev to trial. It is not that the cannibal had a remarkable wit and resourcefulness, but that his victims were almost no one needed. And Seleznev himself, the shadow man, lived an absolutely gray and unnecessary life. Graduated from 8 classes in a boarding school, does not remember his parents. In 1984, he graduated from vocational school, where he studied as a bricklayer. Then anywhere. Mostly handyman and then only for a short time. Absenteeism, drunkenness, petty theft, which eventually led him to prison. After his release, he repeated the path of the romantic several times, that is, he stole, drank and was again behind bars. Only a year had passed between his last release and his murder. The first victim was a 59-year-old drifter they met at a homeless shelter in 2016. The men drank heavily, and Seleznev stabbed a sleeping drinking companion. His body was dismembered and fed on this meat for several weeks. Later in the interrogation, when asked why he did it, he explained simply, "Dogs and cats are tired. I wanted to try human flesh." To avoid starvation, the unemployed and drinking Seleznev learned to catch, kill and butcher domestic animals. The hand was stuffed after several months of working in a meat processing plant. The remains of the murdered man were dumped by the monster into the nearest reservoir in the left bank part of Archangelsk. The next murder took place 2 years later. Seleznev met a 43-year-old man who rented him a room in an apartment on Republican Street. There, he continued to eat dogs and cats, doing so at night while the neighbors slept. On one of these nights, the landlord fell asleep and did not wake up again. Seleznev also dismembered and butchered the corpse, put the meat in the refrigerator, and threw the bones into the river. After that, he stayed in the same apartment as if nothing had happened. A few months later, the father of the murdered man began to search for his son. Seleznev led him into the apartment and convinced him that he paid his son 35,000 rubles for the room until the end of the year. And he himself, they say, went to work in St. Petersburg. Something to do with the forest, the killer lied. The missing man's relationship with his family was cold, they rarely communicated, but when he completely stopped communicating, the father decided to write a report to the police. Unfortunately, it's too late. Before the police visit, Seleznev managed to kill and eat another poor guy, who was only 34 years old. He also killed him in his sleep, dismembered him, and ate him. The investigation could not find a clue for a long time. The evidence was weak. The father of the murdered man found his son's jacket, which contained Seleznev's passport, although he had previously claimed that he had no documents. In addition, during one of the visits, relatives found strange pieces of meat in the refrigerator, and when the police descended, they were no longer there. The search came to nothing. Vyacheslav Nefedyev, an investigator for particularly important cases in the Archangelsk region and the Nenets Autonomous District, who led this case, decided to go to the scene again, although before that the inspection was carried out, and more than once. Moreover, by that time the apartment had already been renovated. He decided to lift the cast iron tub and examine it completely from the outside, and there were suspicious smudges. Nefedyev gave the samples taken for examination, and it showed that it was blood, and at once 2 genotypes, the missing owner of the apartment and another person. It soon turned out that it was the blood of the applicant's son and a man who had once served a sentence in a colony where blood was taken for analysis. His data was in the database. About the third victim, the first in a row, Seleznev told himself. In 2018, during interrogations, he was very talkative and claimed that he was forced to do all this by voices. Moreover, he even volunteered for an investigative experiment to show where he dumped the remains. However, the psychiatric examination showed that Seleznev was sane, and then he fell silent, saying that he did not admit his guilt. Moreover, he demanded to be tried by a jury. At the meeting, where the lawyers filed a motion, one of the journalists asked Seleznev why he insisted on a jury. "Let the people decide," he replied. The jury unanimously concluded, guilty and not worthy of leniency. For previous crimes, Seleznev spent 13 years in prison. Now he will remain behind bars for the rest of his life. The father of the victim also filed a claim for moral damages, and now everything that Seleznev earns while in prison, he will have to give in favor of the victim. The total amount is 1 million rubles. At the time of sentencing, the ogre was 51 years old. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more videos of mysterious stories and photos. Check out this playlist and I'll see you in the next video.